You didn't know that I was there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building a Community of Hope, brought to you by Keystone Mission, the podcast that will shine the light on a dark topic of homelessness by building a community of hope. My name is Justin Behrens, and I'm the CEO and Executive Director of Keystone Mission, a local faith-based nonprofit dedicated to serving the homeless. This podcast will build a community of hope to educate, advocate, and learn about homelessness. Today, I will tell you a little bit about Keystone Mission, why we're doing this podcast, and a brief concept of homelessness that will be later explained in the detail in future podcasts. Keystone Mission got started when a pastor in California came over here to Northeastern Pennsylvania saying we need to do something for the homeless. And when he came over here, he was entrenched in the atmosphere of the true working class of Northeastern Pennsylvania and realizing how difficult it was to truly get the homeless moving. He started having a truck where he had on the back of his truck food, and he was handing out that food to the homeless. As he kept going, he said, this is where I need to make the homeless get better here in Northeastern Pennsylvania. God told me to get out here. This is the location to make it happen. And as he did that, he hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And I remember when he told me one day that when he was in a hotel room, he said, I was about to give up. And this wasn't the calling to help the homeless here in Northeastern Pennsylvania. And his family back home in California said, keep doing it, keep fighting, keep going, keep moving forward. And he didn't give up. And he started moving forward, and new things came on and new things brought on forward. And Keystone Mission started taking a shift into distribution. And that's mostly what people know Keystone Mission about, is the distribution piece of it. And I think it's important that we explain a little bit about distribution. So Keystone Mission would hand out meals. They'd hand out food boxes to those that were in need and hand out clothing to those that were in need. And we've been doing this for the past almost 12 years, making sure that people got what they needed. And we sat and kept looking and seeing what was going on. And this is what brought us to where we are right now. We noticed as distribution was going on that people started coming over and over and over again, and no one was getting better. They kept getting the food, they kept getting their clothing, and then the next month we see the same people getting their food, getting their clothing. And so here at Keystone Mission, we saw it and said, are we really changing people's lives? Are we really transforming them so they don't have to rely on that food, so they don't have to rely on that clothing? And then we came to the conclusion that we're probably hurting them. And it's a concept, if you think about it. We're trying to help people and be doing good things, but we're actually truly hurting them. And what I mean by hurting them is that we're not giving them the opportunity to get better. We're enabling them to continue to come to us and rely on us as the way for food and the way for clothing and not get out of that rut that they were brought into. And so we at Keystone Mission wanted to develop a plan to try to move that forward. And so we started this new program just in January called Team Agape. Now, agape in the word that's used in the Bible to mean the love of God and the God's love back to us. It's the highest intimacy of love. And so we wanted to show that love also. And so this team is a truck that goes out into the elements of where they live. Rather than the homeless coming to us, we're going to them. We're reaching out and we're talking to them and finding out what is their need, what do they want, and trying to really do critical time intervention right then and there and help them in that moment of trouble. So this truck is equipped with all the things that it needs to help people get better. It also has internet service so that if we need to get identification, which is a big problem for the homeless, getting their driver's license, getting their birth certificates, getting their social security card, getting their insurance card, they don't need to come to a building to do that. We can do that straight from the vehicle. We can print out that application, we can have them sign that application, and we can mail that application right then and there. If they need food or they need clothing, we have the stuff equipped there. It's all about the relief that we're trying to provide. We're not enabling them right now. We're using them to build a relationship. And I'll get back to that in a little bit. So as time goes on, we're growing our Team Agape. Soon we're going to be expanding it into street medicine, where we're going to provide medicine right then and there to help them with doctors partnering with us. We're also doing things where we're going out into the square and we're handing out the meals. They're not coming into us for the food. We're going out to them to give them the food. And at that time, we're going to be praying with them and asking, what is it they want us to pray for? What is it they want to talk about? And this is what's helping them give hope, building that hope so that they can get better and move forward. But more importantly, it makes a connection with Keystone Mission to the homeless so that we can find out what is the root of that problem and how can we move forward with that problem. So all these things are happening, and we really want to find out, why are these things broken? I talked about the enabling before, but why are homeless not getting better? If there's so many services out there that are providing great product and great services, why are the homeless still there? Because of what we saw in the 15 years of working with the homeless and seeing the system is broken, we wanted to develop this podcast to share to you how the system is broken and how we can build a community of hope to help this homeless. Let's talk about, first of all, the housing first versus long-term transformation. This country and this government came out with the Housing First initiative. Let's get people into homes. Let's take the homeless and put them right into their homes. That works for some, but that doesn't work for others. For someone that's been living on the streets for 15 years, 20 years, and putting them into an apartment right away, they don't have those life skills to really understand, how do I stay in that home and how do I keep in that home? Now let's talk about long-term transformation. Putting someone in a place and having them stay in there for a shelter for over 2 years, 3 years, they become enabled. They eventually learn to say, hey, you know what? If you're going to provide me a place to sleep, I'm okay with that. I don't want to move and get better. So we need to come up with a plan that works with both philosophies and really compromises and makes sure that we understand how we can work with both of them. The red tape and all the guidelines that the homeless have to go through is another barrier that they face. I know of individuals that live out on the street that can't even get into a homeless shelter because they don't have an ID. There's a barrier there. And then when they need to get their photo ID so that they can get their services, they can't even get the ID because they need a birth certificate, and they don't have a birth certificate. So they hit this round robin going back and forth. So there's a lot of red tape that these homeless face. And then the people say, well, they're homeless because they want to be homeless. Well, if we don't give them an opportunity to get out of that rut, how do they expect them not to be homeless anymore? We are enabling them to become homeless. We're forcing them to be homeless because of all this red tape. Another thing I want to talk about is the Homeless Bill of Rights. In another episode, I'll be talking about this. We need to push down there in the state legislative, here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, a Homeless Bill of Rights. We just had an election just a couple months ago. Did you know that a homeless person can't vote? If they are a U.S. citizen, shouldn't they be able to vote? But if they don't have an ID or an address to work on, they can't vote. Do you know that a homeless person can live out on the streets in the cold and can't go into a place because the government prevents that because of whatever zoning laws or whatever statutes there are? We need to start looking at things. And I'll be going forward that in a different podcast. So you're probably saying, Keystone Mission, you're talking about the problems. How do we fix that? Well, we got to stop putting Band-Aids on a broken bone. You got a broken bone, you go to the doctors, you put a cast on it. You don't put Band-Aids on it. And so Keystone Mission is all about putting that cast on to heal that broken bone. And we're doing it by 3 different ways. Let's talk about the first way, relief. To develop a rapport with a guest in their element, the purpose of relief is to meet their essential, immediate needs of the homeless, necessary for survival. In this phase of their journey of life, of transformation, our team at Keystone Mission will build authentic relationships with the homeless guests. Keystone Mission is expanding the outside of the walls and going directly where the homeless are in Scranton and Wilkes-Barre communities. Jesus chose to use fishermen as disciples because they understood the concept of casting a net to gather people to build his kingdom. Like casting that net, Keystone Mission sees what we need to do. We see that the fish we can acquire, and I use fish to represent the homeless, to select a few homeless will stay in that net and seek the journey of life transformation. And a few will jump out, and that's okay, because we'll still continue to provide that relief and build that relationship, because eventually that net will cast them in and they'll be ready for their transformation. So yes, we do need to do relief, not enabling, but provide relief. The next step is rehabilitation. The purpose for this is to train and start transforming their lives, building a relationship with the community, building skills that will help them get better, establishing outcomes and guidelines that will make them successful. Our vision here at Keystone Mission is a transformation campus. We want to build an all-inclusive area where they can live on their level of change, whether they're there for 3 months or whether they're there for 2 years. The goal of that transformation campus is to allow them to live comfortably, away from all stressors, and start getting to the root of their problems and helping them move in that direction. Keystone Mission wants that relationship with them. We want them to get trained in a skill that will get them be prosperous for the rest of their life. We want to get them the skills that will make them understand how to move on in their life. Which brings us to the third phase, the development. This is to provide stable housing environment that will last the rest of their life with a relationship that lasts. Having financial stability. This is all about having them move into an apartment for the rest of their life. Not having the fear that they will lose it. Understanding the concepts to pay bills month to month. Understanding that they'll have a job that will give back to the community and also give back to themselves. Keystone Mission is not looking to do the medical, the mental health, the drug and alcohol, or the job training. That's a daunting task. We want to partner with the community. We got community agencies out there that are already providing excellent medical care for the homeless, mental health care for the homeless, drug and alcohol care for the homeless, and job training for the homeless. What does Keystone Mission want to do? We want to partner with these organizations, bring them in with us, work together as a team, because Keystone Mission wants to specialize in one thing. Just like Jesus did, we want to specialize in relationships. For I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Matthew 25, 35 to 36. I'm blessed today to have one of my brothers out there, Joe, who experienced homelessness and now is actually living on his own in an apartment. Joe, welcome. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good. Joe, let's hear about your story of how you became homeless.
Well, I'm 68 years old. I'm retired and have some health conditions. But on July 3rd, my apartment caught on fire and I became homeless. I don't really consider myself a homeless person, more or less temporarily displaced. But I had problems because I kind of fell through the system. I didn't have any, I had let my driver's license expire because of confusion with the new licenses, the license and the ID, federal ID, and at the time, I didn't feel like I didn't have a car, so I didn't feel like I'm going to need the license to drive, but I needed the ID, and I let it expire, and therefore I didn't have a legitimate ID.
So let me ask you, Joe, a lot of the viewers here that are listening and that are watching this, they're probably thinking in their heads, well, Joe, he's probably a drug addict, right?
No.
So the typical thing that we see that homelessness is there's drug addiction, there's mental health issues, there's criminal behavior. So are you any of that characteristics?
No, actually the opposite. I don't do drugs. I did have a problem with alcohol years ago, but I recovered from that. I had been, before retirement, active. I was part of the social justice ministries at Immaculate Conception Church on the Hill in Scranton, working kind of with, but on a much more limited basis with helping other people. And that is a point that I like to make, is that you're a different situation because you're a professional at what you're doing.
Right.
But we were sort of just a group of parishioners trying to help other people. And you don't understand what going through a situation like this is. You can think about it intellectually, but until you live it, you don't understand the difficulties. and the feelings that you have to go through.
So that's amazing to understand that you don't have the characteristics of what we typically think of a homeless
Right.
person. You just told me that you have you've been working. You lived in an apartment,
Yes.
right? And then it caught on fire, and that made you homeless.
Yes.
It wasn't by choice that you wanted to be homeless.
No, definitely not.
So we talked about relief, right? And relief as in those things that don't try to enable you. So kind of explain about the relief that tried to help you get by. You just became homeless. You didn't know what to do. You didn't know where to go. You were lost in that whole world. You said I couldn't. It's hard to explain it because I haven't lived those life. Try to help the viewers understand what that life is like.
Well, first of all, I hadn't. It was like I woke up in the morning and was fed my cats and went to the store. Walked out of my apartment to go to the store, and on the way back, my apartment was on fire. My room was on fire. I had absolutely no idea. Was not prepared for this. It was not planned, and I didn't know what to do. I did get a little bit of assistance from the Red Cross
Okay.
at that day.
And that was right after the incident that happened.
That same day.
Okay.
But that didn't last very long. It was just a payment to go stay in a hotel room for 3 days. And
Did you have any money?
No. Well, yes, I did have money because technically it was the beginning of the month. I'm on Social Security. It was disability, but after 67, they put you over to regular accounting purposes, I suppose. But I had just gotten my check, plus I had gotten the incentive that came through.
Oh, the stimulus
The
check.
stimulus check.
Okay.
And I had spent a lot of that stimulus check getting prepared because I had cats that I was taking care of. A lot of that, and that all disappeared.
So you were preparing for what you were living normally, and then
Right.
suddenly something happened. So let's now go a little bit further down the line in your life here after that incident that happened. How did you eat? How did you find food? How did you where did you sleep after those 3 days after Red Cross?
Well, because I did have some money, I actually spent a little bit longer than the 3 days. I think it was a week and a half or so. And because of the fact that I had a cat, I had to go to a hotel in Clark Summit,
Which allowed animals.
which allowed animals,
Gotcha.
but I didn't have transportation. It cost me $25 one way by cab to get back into town to get anything done.
So this apartment didn't last forever.
No.
So then what'd you do after that?
I slept out on the street behind a dumpster for almost 2 months.
So behind
because
a dumpster?
I could not get into the shelter because I didn't have the right ID.
Okay, we'll get back to that.
Okay.
So for 2 months, you slept behind a dumpster.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you eat?
Partly through Keystone Mission,
Okay.
and also the food, St. Francis, also partially during the day. But everything was so confused because of the COVID. Everything was,
So
nothing worked right.
So COVID threw a whole wrench in the whole loop too.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's talk about rehabilitation, right?
Okay.
You're sleeping for 2 months behind this dumpster. We got to get you back on track, right? We got to move you into a direction you want to go. It sounds like just from talking with you and knowing you personally that you really wanted to get better. You wanted to
Yeah.
get back in.
Yeah.
So how'd that whole rehabilitation work? How did you find connections to build that rehabilitation?
Well, basically, I knew what I had to do and just trying to get through. I worked through Keystone. I worked with Community Intervention Center also. I was very lucky because the day after the fire, that would have been, well, actually, it would have been 2 days after, because the fire happened on the 3rd of July. On the 5th of July, I had a set-up telephone appointment with welfare to go through all my benefits. That I was able to take that call and get that rolling, and they changed my address and everything for me. and kept that moving. So in that way, I lucked out.
So I remember you coming to our building at Keystone Mission. I remember you getting the food that you needed to survive.
Right.
I remember the cell phone. I actually remember myself personally driving to get you the cell phone card so that you could get the minutes to make your phone call. There's a lot of things that people don't realize, that once you become homeless, you lose almost all connection of everything.
Yeah.
A cell phone, which we take for granted.
If you don't have a cell phone, you're lost.
And
You
you
have
were
to have
fighting
a
for it.
phone.
You were fighting for one of those to make sure you had that. We also got you the clothing that you needed.
Right.
But we also built relationships with the community with you.
Yes.
And you talked about CIC, you talked about St. Francis, and the connections that you
And
made
also
there.
because of I have HIV.
Okay.
And I've been working with the Right Center also, and Sister Ruth.
So you worked with the Right Center close.
There were a number. The three agencies were instrumental in getting back on my feet again.
So you came into development, right? And this is where I picked you up at your apartment that you have right now.
Yeah.
You know, what did it feel like when you walked into that apartment?
Well, it was a big relief. I did eventually get into the shelter, and I had a problem at the shelter because of allergies, and I couldn't stay at the shelter, so I had enough money put aside. But for my rent, with no apartment, and I wound up for 7 days in the back of a van. I had enough money to rent a van so that I wasn't out on the street then. And fortunately, it was election day, I remember. I voted in the morning, and I got a call that I was approved for that room.
Amazing.
And the next day, I returned the van.
We were talking in the car when I drove you up here to do this interview, and there was something we were shooting ideas and talking around, like, what was it that made you get better, right? What was it that moved you into that direction? Because a lot of people see the homeless and they see them, oh, you know what, they're just a burden to society, right? Yeah. But that's not true. There's something that clicked with you. And what do you think that was? What brought you to that, make that change, to go to development?
Well, it has to be, you have to have the desire to change. But do you go through, there's a stigma about being homeless, even when you're not. Like I said, I don't classify myself as homeless. I was temporarily displaced. But there's a stigma to that. And after you go through this over and over and over again, and there are times when it just seems like it's not going to work, you have to have the hope, that a belief, a faith that you're going to get through it.
So something just got to you and said, I got hope that I'm going to make through this.
Well, I had that in the beginning, but it starts to wear on you after you're out there for a while. It seems like everything's going against you. You have to have the determination to do it.
But it's the hope that helped you.
The hope.
And I'll tell you, Keystone Mission did nothing to truly get you to where you need to. We gave you that hope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You took that hope and you went forward with that.
Yeah.
Joe, I appreciate you talking with us today. Real quick, I'd just like to do a prayer with you, if you don't mind, and just hopefully everything works forward and moves in the right direction. So if you don't mind, I'd like to pray.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, bless Joe. Look over him. Give him the guidance that he needs as he goes forward. Joe started broken, and just like Jesus went to broken people, you're going to him and guiding him through that direction, and give him that wisdom, give him that knowledge, give him that strength. Look over him in his health, look over him in his finances, so that Joe can become prosperous and be on his own and moving forward. He's gone this far with your faith, God, and he's really moving forward. Keep moving him. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Joe, and I appreciate it so much.
I saw you. You didn't know that I was there, but it was me.
Homelessness won't be solved by government alone, and will take a community to come together to solve this problem. I'd like to thank our sponsor, O'Donnell Law, who partners with Keystone Mission to make a huge impact in changing lives in the hurting and broken in Northeastern Pennsylvania. Thanks for listening, and next month we'll explore what a homeless person is. We all watch in the movies and see how they portray them on TV, but we will break down those myths and we'll be lucky enough to talk to another brother who's experiencing homelessness. Look for us on the internet at www.keystonemission.org or call us at 570-871-4795 to get involved or donate to help impact those in need. I pray for this nation, Northeastern Pennsylvania, and most of all, our brothers and sisters who are living with homelessness. Together, we will build a community of hope.